Good morning. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Jess De Los Santos. It's the start of a new trading day, but first, let's go straight to our top story. The government's economic team has raised its growth target for 2021. That's on the back of increased mobility and continued easing of restrictions. The Interagency Development Budget Coordination Committee now expects a full year GDP growth of 5 to 5.5%. That's higher than its downgraded goal of 4 to 5% it gave back in August. The economic team says growth is seen to further accelerate in the fourth quarter, citing the uptick in business activity. The DBCC also hopes that the country's GDP will return to pre-pandemic levels by 2022. Socioeconomic Planning Chief Carl Chua says the government is waiting for health experts' conclusions on the effect of the Omicron variant. But what's important so far is that the country has already imposed border controls. The Asian Development Bank has also raised its growth outlook for the Philippines to 5.1% from a previous projection of 4.5%. The Banco Central has created a task force to investigate the online banking fraud involving BDO and Union Bank. BSP Governor Ben Jokno says the task force is composed of cyber anti-money laundering specialists as well as legal officers. They will be tasked to determine how the unauthorized transactions took place and to control lapses involving the incident. As of now, the BSP says it has already identified the persons behind the Mark Nagoyo persona used in the hacking incidents. BSP Technology Risk and Innovation Director Melchor Plabasan said around 2 to 4 persons were behind the unauthorized money transfers that defrauded almost 700 BDO users. Plabasan said that BSP had ruled out phishing attacks since none of the victims gave out their credentials or OTPs. That's why Plabasan said even BDO itself may be subject to sanctions despite the fact that the perpetrators are reportedly not bank employees. Meanwhile, the National Privacy Commission head Raymond Liboro said they are now in touch with data protection officers from BDO. For its part, BDO says it's in the process of reimbursing the clients who lost hundreds of thousands of pesos due to the unauthorized money transfers. The bank assured the victims that BDO will shoulder all the losses that resulted from the incidents. Okay, this time around, let's have a check at how local markets is doing 6 minutes into the trading day. As you can see here, the PSCI fluctuating at the start of the session down close to 0.4% to 7,215. Markets, of course, got a late session boost on Tuesday following ADB's more improved forecast here in the economy from 4.5% previously to 5.1%. Now, today, investors likely to take cues from economic managers who, like what we reported earlier, is now projecting a 5.5% growth this year. That's from their downgraded target of 4 to 5% previously. Again, looking at local shares at the moment, somehow tempering those losses, but still down 0.3%, joining the rest of Asia, which today looks mixed. This is U.S. inflation, weakened sentiment, further reinforcing case for the withdrawal of monetary stimulus as the Fed decision looms. Looking at this chart right here, you'd see Japan at least opening higher. However, it's not the same case here for Korean and Aussie stocks here. The Kospi is down 0.2%. Australia, on the other hand, has declined at least 0.6% during the first part of the trading day. Over here, you'd see our leaders and laggards. Let me just refresh this one very quickly. You'd see our telco PLDT still the best performer so far this day, up by 2.5%, followed by GT Capital also increasing by 1.25%. More muted gains here for the rest of our blue chips here, the likes of San Miguel Security Bank and ICTSI. However, on the losing end here, you have Metro Bank down by 1.5%, the day's worst for performers so far, followed by LT Group, Converge, and SM Prime, all declining by more than 8%. This time around, let's check in on BDO and Union Bank as what we have reported earlier. You have BDO saying that the online fraud attack affected nearly 700 customers. A task force has already been formed to look into the incident. So far, they have identified 2 to 4 persons behind the attacks. As you can see, BDO starting the day in the green, represented by the white line in this chart right here, up by a quarter of 8% to 127 and 30 centavos a piece. Union Bank just the same, also increasing so far in today's session as represented by the orange line. Now, other stock to check here, we have to take a look at Phoenix Petroleum. That's after the Supreme Court affirmed the Court of Appeals dismissal of a 6 billion pesos smuggling case filed against Phoenix Petroleum Chairman Dennis Uy. The company, in its summary of the court's ruling, says there's no proof that Uy and customs broker Jorlan Cabanes violated the Tariff and Customs Code. Recall that back in 2011, the customs filed a complaint alleging that Phoenix failed to pay taxes on a 5.9 billion peso worth of oil shipments back in 2010 and 2011. So far, no movement here for Phoenix Petroleum, which still stands at 10 pesos and 94 centavos a piece. Here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The Senate has approved on third and final reading a bill that seeks to create a department for overseas Filipino workers. 20 senators voted yes to the Senate Bill 2234, creating the Department of Migrant Workers, which had been certified as urgent by President Duterte. Under the measure, the agency will absorb the functions of the POEA and will be tasked to protect the rights of OFWs. Senator Franklin Drilon noted the amendment to rename the agency from the Department of Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos to limit jurisdiction to overseas employment and labor migration. This will also allow a separation of authority between the new agency and the DFA. The Agriculture Department says rice imports may reach as much as 2.95 million metric tons this year. Based on the DA's latest rice supply outlook, rice imports may reach 838,000 metric tons in the fourth quarter of the year, with more than 350,000 metric tons set to arrive in December. Local production of rice is also seen to increase in the last quarter of the year, mainly due to the harvest season. Meanwhile, participants in a food security forum on Monday said farmers and fishermen are not reaping the benefits of the liberalization of rice imports. The Federation of Free Farmers said much of the value is captured by traders, which means the pro-import policy of the government has, quote, exacerbated the problems of farmers. With signs pointing to the economy already on bounce back mode, growth in the export sector remains sluggish. Can the sector still catch up? Let's find out from George Barcelon, Chairman of the Philippine Exports Confederation. Good morning, Sir George. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Good morning, Esther. Good morning to the televiewers. Yes.
Okay, so looking at the figures back in October, what do you think pulled down the pace of export growth?
Well, it's just a small dip, but if you consider that since April of 2020, our export was down 50%. But ever since the last 8 months, we have consecutive growth on exports, and now we're up by 18%. So we're looking the slight blip is due to the problem we have with the logistic, with the congestion, with the lack of cargo space in the shipping sector. I think this will be with us for the better part of even next year. So hope that this will not dampen too much our export revenue. But overall, the export sector is very resilient. We are thankful that the government took note that export is considered as an essential sector. And ever since the quarantine, of course, following all the hygiene protocol, many of the exporters were allowed to operate. It's a question of the market now is picking up in the North America. Their economy seems to be gaining some strength, and we look forward to a better year for 2022.
Okay, Earlier, you mentioned about logistical issues, especially in ports. You expect that to still be the case in the near term, at least. Does this mean we are expecting still sluggish growth from the sector for the remainder of the year, meaning November and December?
Well, for the remainder of the year, I mean, there are exporting export goods in the pipeline.
Mhm.
So we would see that November and December numbers should go up a bit. For the whole year of 2022, there's a conservative projections of increase in export by about 15%.
Mhm.
Of course, this really depends on the recent development of the new variant of
Mhm.
the Omicron. But so far, from the reports of where the variant originate from South Africa, they're saying that the spread is transmissibility is fast, but the severity of this new variant is mild. So we hope that those statements can hold and will not affect too much the economy.
But given that, still, should the Omicron variant, in the worst case scenario, at least lead to further border controls, how's that going to affect the sector's growth, especially into 2022? Like you mentioned, you have at least an estimate of 15% growth for next year.
Yes, I would like to think that most of the countries now having experience of almost a year and a half in dealing with the COVID pandemic has learned to put all the safety nets in living with COVID-19. We know that this pandemic is not going to go. It's not going to go away in a year or two, but we have to be flexible and resilient uh, to be to continue our economy in a new normal. And I think that applies all over the world. And the fact that we still have logistic issues, not only in the shipping, but also a lot in the components, especially in the electronic sector. Our electronic sector generates about 55% of our exports. So they have been, their numbers have not been going up as they projected. But I would like to think that the supply chain is gradually improving
Mhm.
towards 2022.
Okay, now, Sir George, we're about to wrap up the year. What level of growth are you expecting to hit this year?
Well, as I said, we had eight consecutive continuous growth for the last 8 months. And the projection from DTI is the export will still be down by 20% of the projections that was done for the
Mhm.
year.
Mhm.
But in a way, the positive view is that the market, our export market in North America and also China, our exports for October, the biggest market is China,
Okay.
which garnered about almost 16%. So China has been, of course, lately the news about also their concern about the spread of the new variant. But so far, it's still so good.
Mhm. But when are you expecting at least a return to pre-pandemic levels here for the sector?
It's hard to venture a guess, but hopefully by the end of 2022, uh, for us, we're seeing positive signs that the pandemic is now in a way controlled. So with that, the production side of the will not be hampered so much. So we hope that we will rebound and recover our export numbers to pre-pandemic time.
Okay, at the same time, like what you mentioned earlier, 55% of the sector concentrated heavily on the electronics market. How do you plan to further diversify your products and markets, especially now with economies opening up more?
Well, I think we are working with the export promotions. Of course, we're entering a new for next year the new administration, but we push hard for selling missions. Going abroad,
Mhm.
and of course, going up the value chain on our product lines. At the same time, the because of the COVID pandemic, the travel has been affected badly, and the trade shows here have been canceled for the last 2 years. So with this, the situation looking positive, those trade shows, I'm sure that will be held for 2022, and that will also bring in new potential buyers from abroad.
Now, apart from the electronic space, which other products do you think has growth potential, especially coming into next year? And what markets do you think would be a good location at least?
The agri sectors, the fruits sectors, we've been getting, well, of course, the market in China has been growing. Okay?
Mhm.
And you'd be surprised that the sectors such as leather goods, handbags for ladies. There's a plant in Angeles that has been growing for the last 2 years, even under this pandemic situation. So the market is there, and we have to ramp up our production capacity.
And lastly, before we let you go, as a member of the private sector, do you think we're ready, at least here in the capital, to downgrade to alert level 1, or we should just hold on to this current alert level 2 that we have in place?
Uh, I think my personal opinion is that we can live with the level 2 for the rest of the year. Okay.
Mhm.
Then in January or mid-February, let's monitor whether because of this relaxed economy, there would be any surges. If there are none, then I think the government will be very confident in moving to alert level 1.
All right. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Again, George Barcelon, Chairman of the Philippine Exports Confederation Incorporated. Thank you very much, Sir George, and keep safe.
Thank you, Jester.
And that's a first look into the business day this Wednesday, December 15, 2021. Catch Business World Live for the market close at 3:15 p.m. today. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and we are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.